I don't have a spare pen.
I do not actually.
Danny, you have a pen? Just realized I didn't bring one with me. It doesn't have to be cleaned. I've never really understood this cleaning of the pens thing. If you get a respiratory disease from a pen, that means you're using it wrong.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Welcome from the MST boardroom, unused for 2 years.
So it must be really clean.
It's very clean, sparkling.
All right, I'm showing 9 o'clock. I will call this meeting to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Okay, City of Delray Oaks. City of Greenfield. I think I thought I saw Yaneli on here, or that she's running late. I just got an email from her. City of King City,
Present.
City of Marina,
Here.
City of Seaside,
Here.
City of, sorry, County of Monterey.
Here.
It looks like we have a quorum, and City of Greenfield will be joining shortly.
Thank you, Jeanette. At this time, is there any member of the public who could speak on any item not on the agenda? Again, I'll ask, is there any member of the public who could speak on any item not on the agenda? Hearing and seeing none, we'll now move on to item 3, our consent agenda. Any members have any questions or comments or like to pull the consent agenda? Seeing none, is there any member of the public who'd like to speak on the consent agenda? Again, I'll ask, is there any member of the public who'd like to speak on the consent agenda? Hearing and seeing none, I'll bring this back to committee for action.
Make a motion. Second.
First with Alejo, second with Pacheco. Can we have a roll call, please?
Hey, Director, is Martinez on now? Okay, Director Labar,
Aye.
Director Burnett.
Aye.
Director Pacheco,
Aye.
and Director Alejo.
Aye.
Thank you. The consent agenda is approved.
Thank you, everyone. We'll move on to action item 4-1, review of administrative performance. Carl?
Thank you, Chair. Just going over some of the more administrative related dashboard items. The fare box recovery ratio, and which is a measure of how much funding we're receiving from passenger fares. While it has increased from last year as our ridership has increased, it's still less than half of where we would expect it to be, in a pre-COVID timeframe. We'd expect to be receiving somewhere between 15 to 20% of our expenses recovered from passenger fares. We're currently year to date only seeing about 8% of our expenses being covered by passenger fares. So the difference is we're using our federal funds to make up that difference in revenue that we're still not receiving from our passengers. So this is the importance of demonstrating why we will need to increase ridership, which we hope to achieve through the implementation of the recommendations of the comprehensive operational analysis that you approved in January, because we will need to at some point replace those funds. And if you look in the dashboards where we show our cash flow projections, you can see that our cash flow is expected to peak this summer and then start to decline through the end of the fiscal year as we see our CARES relief funds that we received in 3 different tranches over the past 2 years. We don't anticipate seeing any further CARES relief funding out of Congress. And so we'll be drawing down on those reserves. So it's going to, we have probably about 2 years worth of cash reserves in order to bring our ridership back. So that's just something to keep an eye on as we slowly recover. We don't have an imminent issue with cash flow, but it is something that we're going to be keeping our eyes on as we budget for the next 2 years. With that, that concludes my review of the administrative performance of things I think you should be aware of. I'd be happy to answer any other questions you might have in general.
Thank you, Carl. Any committee members have any questions or comments? I would just like to make one, Carl, as we move forward too, other agencies are obviously seeing the low ridership, and more specifically, those dollars that we receive from that ridership. Are there efforts at the state and federal levels to let our representatives know that this is not really a good indication of the value of public transit?
Oh, absolutely. I think we've had really great support from both the state and federal representatives. What we are starting to see, though, is prior to COVID, there were a number, if you may recall, go back 2 years, you may recall that there were a number of special interest groups that were seeking free public transit service, whether it's for college students or high school students or seniors or other members of the community that made a case for themselves. No one at that time was able to identify where the replacement funding would come from. We're starting to see those calls come again in a number of bills at the state level, where there's some bills that are looking for free transportation for anyone under the age of 25, for example. We need to be careful. It all sounds good, but we need to remember that anything that we offer free to the general public, then we also must offer free to our MST rides paratransit system, which those trips are much highly subsidized than our normal fixed route. And we just need to be able to identify that, if we're not collecting that revenue at the fare box, what are we doing in place of it? Are we collecting the revenue from somewhere else, or are we going to cut service as a result? Because something has to give if we're going to give away free service.
Thank you, Carl. Is there any member of the public that could speak on this item? Again, I'll ask, is there any member of the public who would like to speak on this item? Hearing and seeing none. Thank you, Carl. We'll now move on to 4-2, receive an update on federal legislative priorities. Carl and Don Gilchrist.
On our line, here we go, our representative in Washington, D.C. You can see the Capitol behind him, but it's not covered in snow, so we know that that's not a real picture. How you doing, Don?
Doing well. Good morning, everyone. And it really depends on the day of the week, whether we're going to have snow on the ground or if it's going to be 70-degree weather. I hate to be a cherry blossom tree trying to figure out what to do right now, but Congress is not confused. Congress is doing a lot of great stuff. I do want to give a little bit of an update. For the record, Don Gilchrist with Thomas Walters and Associates. I have a few slides I'd like to share, and I really appreciate the assistance of the staff. And if you would advance to the next slide, please. Just wanted to start out with a snapshot of the infrastructure legislation that was enacted in November. This is the big news for transit and for transportation in general. This is a slide that APTA put together, and I'm really appreciate the chance to share their work with you because it does illustrate the infrastructure legislation very quickly, the big increase in transit spending above the baseline levels. This is a 5-year number, so 5-year reauthorization of surface transportation programs. And the other interesting thing about this particular chart is it shows the increase in the proportion of funding that's going to discretionary programs. And so just to briefly explain that, in the infrastructure package, there were 3 different types of funding provisions. One has to do with formula programs, and that's FTA formula programs is the primary way that MST gets funded from the federal government. That money comes out of the Highway Trust Fund typically and is on the basis of contract authority. There are discretionary programs, and these are usually authorized and then funded each year in the appropriations bill. The New Starts program is a great example of this. That's the program that we are seeking funding from for the SURF project. Another example would be the RAISE program, which is the multimodal grant program that is used for regional and local priorities. So those are need funding every year in the appropriations process, but there was a third category. This is primarily discretionary funding that was included in the infrastructure package in the form of advance appropriations. And what this amounted to is a big pile of money that was added to this 5-year bill to plus up the normal funding with advance appropriations that are really making a difference in the big increase for transportation programs and for public transit. So those 3 different ones kind of work together. If we could advance to the next slide. The big news is the omnibus appropriations legislation that Congress passed last week and is going to be signed very soon. The appropriations bills and the infrastructure package work together. And we have to look at both of them in order to see what the actual results are for fiscal year 22. If you combine the two, what you see is there's a 58% increase overall for transit compared to last year. And that works out in various levels for different programs under the transit program that FTA runs. For instance, the formula programs were increased by 36% compared to last year. In the bus and bus facilities category, a big increase of 95% compared to what was appropriated last year. So overall, the 2 bills, the infrastructure package and the appropriations package, work together very well to provide a big increase for transit and should be great news for MST over the next 5 years. If we could advance to the next slide, please. This is another chart provided by APTA. I just think it's a beautiful picture of the levels of funding that we've had in recent years, and then the big increase in 2022 with the enactment of the infrastructure legislation. Very good picture there. And what is interesting is that the big increases pretty much take place in year 1, and then they're maintained over the life of the bill. And that's the best way to get the money. You want it as fast as possible. You don't want to wait 5 years to see the increases. So that's good news for MST and for transit. If we could advance to the next slide, please. Just wanted to add these notes about what is going on right now with the enactment of the omnibus and the enactment of infrastructure. We're still working on the appropriations bills for the next fiscal year. We're waiting for President Biden to send his budget request to Congress. That has been delayed, and we hope to see it by the end of March, perhaps the first week of April. That's the start of the next cycle, and we have to see what the president is proposing before we can fine-tune our requests on behalf of MST. Throughout the year, we'll be focusing on implementing the infrastructure law. This means paying close attention to all the notices of funding opportunities. Now that the omnibus is about to be enacted, that will allow FTA to release the full year apportionments for your formula funds, and that's a big cash flow issue for MST. And we haven't given up on the Build Back Better plan. That certainly has stalled out and is not moving through the Senate right now, but there is some talk about restarting that process in hopes that some of the work that was done last year on budget reconciliation can be salvaged. It will certainly not look the same if it does move forward. We'll see a much narrower focus on fewer programs, but we hopefully will see something start to happen in the next 2 to 4 weeks on that. If that doesn't happen, then the schedule will really work against us and it will start to slip away. So obviously there's going to be other things that come up this year. We'll continue to pay close attention to what's going on in DC, work with your staff to monitor any challenges or opportunities for MST, continuing to work with CTA and our other transit partners as well. So if we could advance to the next slide. That's the conclusion of the presentation. I'd be happy to respond to any comments or questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Don. We appreciate that. Committee members, any questions or comments? Is there any member of the public who could speak on this item? Again, I'll ask, is there any member of the public who would like to speak on this item? Hearing and seeing none. Don, just quickly, in case I missed it. So the House and the Senate just passed the 1.5 trillion bill. And in it this time, the earmarks made it through. And I would imagine if the president signs that, this will probably come more of a traditional back to normal practice with Congress.
That's a great observation. Everybody was paying close attention to how that process went this time around to see if it was going to work. It has been a bumpy ride because we're 5 months into the new fiscal year, and I hope those people that got funding that they requested, over a year ago, that their projects are still relevant. But apart from that, it's being seen as a big success. The real travesty is that the transportation earmarks tended to be more fruitful in what we call the highway bill, which is the surface transportation reauthorization, the 5-year bill that got enacted in November is what I'm talking about. And there were no earmarks for transportation projects in that package. And so that was an opportunity that won't come around again for another 5 years. However, there will be, I expect, another opportunity for earmarks in the annual appropriations bill. I think everybody's sort of evaluating how it went at this point, and we'll start to see the opportunity to submit requests in less than a month. I couldn't be too much more specific than that. And of course, it'll be a very quick turnaround, and I have to apologize to your staff for all the work that they're going to have to do to meet those deadlines, but they were great last year. We will certainly be trying very hard to craft projects that are desirable for inclusion. Mr. Sidoric has already briefed Congressman Panetta on what our requests will be this time around, and we're also in the process of reaching out to Representative Lofgren, and your staff will be briefing them on projects in the near future, since with redistricting, we'll be picking up an additional member of Congress representing MST. So yes, we certainly want to continue full blast, full speed to try to obtain funding through that mechanism in the next appropriations cycle.
Thank you, Don. Okay, now we'll move on to 4-3, receive an update on state legislative priorities. Carl and Michelle.
I'm going to kick this over to Michelle, who's been our appointed representative on the California Transit Association State Legislative Committee on behalf of MST, taking over a seat that I had for better part of a decade. So we're part of our career development. We're going to kick this over to Michelle. Take it away.
Thanks, Carl. If I miss anything, you can fill in.
I don't think you will.
Good morning, committee members. Michelle Overmeyer, Director of Planning and Innovation. My staff report is on page 89 of your agenda package. I'm not going to read through all of the legislation here, but I do want to highlight a few of them because there were some new developments that have come out since the writing of the staff report. So the first one is SB 1161 MIN. This one is really directed towards the 10 largest transit operators by ridership in the state. So it doesn't really impact MST. We did hear some concerns from these operators that they are, if the bill passes, they're going to be required to investigate harassment that takes place anywhere along the whole journey of the trip, which would include like the first mile, last mile piece that the transit operator has no jurisdiction over. CTA is working with the author's office to address this through amendments. AB 1919 by Assembly Member Holden was amended last Monday. I'm changing this now from watch to oppose. The bill, as Carl alluded to earlier, has been revised so that it's now intended to ensure that all people 25 years and younger with California residency receive free transit. So this would now require transit operators to provide free transit to people 25 years and younger, or risk losing their State Transit Development Act, State Transit Assistance, and Low Carbon Transit Operations Program funds. The bill has no funding tied to it, so it would be an unfunded mandate. And my rough estimate is that MST could lose somewhere between $30 and $35 million with this. So we're going to be opposing that one as it stands now. The next one I wanted to call your attention to is AB 2441, CALRA. This one is sponsored by the Teamsters and ATU. It's according to the California Transit Association, it seems that the intent of the bill is really to head off advancing automated vehicle technology. It's so vaguely written at this point that small items such as computer purchases would require collective bargaining. So we're going to be opposing this bill. And then I want to call your attention to SB 942, Newman. I'm changing this one from watch to support. It is now being co-sponsored by the California Transit Association, and it would allow us to have more flexibility in how we spend our low carbon transit operations programs funds. And that concludes my update here. Carl, is there anything else you want to add?
No, I think you did a fine job, Michelle.
Thanks.
Thank you, Michelle. Committee members, any questions or comments? Is there any member of the public who like to speak on this item? Again, I'll ask, is there any member of the public who like to speak on this item? Hearing and seeing none. Thank you again, Michelle. We'll now move on to item 4-4, receive a report on the governor's proposed budget. Michelle?
Thank you. Carl, I'll take this one and you can add to it also. Sure. Okay, so the latest that I've heard from our colleagues in Sacramento is that the state legislative analyst's office is indicating that the surplus might be between $6 and $23 billion more than the $20.6 billion surplus estimate in January. The California Transit Association, CTA, has sent a letter to the governor outlining public transit operators' budget priorities for this coming year. With the enacted federal bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act that Don Gilchrist just talked about, there's a huge opportunity to reinvent public transportation in ways that further the state's ambitious environmental objectives, create good paying jobs in California-based manufacturing and trades, and enhance mobility options. So CTA's letter to the governor outlines some priorities. Transit and rail capital, transit and rail operations, zero emission buses and infrastructure, zero emission rail and infrastructure, and emerging technologies, homelessness, gas tax holiday, and additional investments in grade separations for highway and rail crossings, and climate adaptation. So in most cases, the CTA is suggesting to the administration that the funding targets outlined in the January budget should be floors, not ceilings. In regards to the gas tax holiday, the CTA has significant concerns and opposes the governor's proposal to eliminate the annual automatic inflationary adjustment to the fuel excise tax in the next fiscal year. So the state collects this excise tax from suppliers before they deliver fuel to retail stations. So there's no guarantee that cost savings would even be realized by people at the gas pump. But the proposal would reduce funding necessary to support public transit by an estimated $523 million. Impacts to MST aren't known at this time, but they could be huge. So while the CTA letter didn't specify a specific dollar amount that they want the governor to increase state funding, there have been other letters sent to the governor with specific requests. So a group from Southern California Transit operators and programming agencies is requesting $18 billion in surplus be added to the governor's proposal. A lot of that would support the transportation infrastructure improvements needed for the Olympics coming up. And then the San Francisco Bay Area, a group of transit operators and the Metropolitan Transportation Commission sent in a letter requesting a minimum of $10 billion from the general fund surplus go to support local and regional transportation priorities. MST has put in a request to Senator Laird for $5 million to go towards the construction of our surf busway and bus rapid transit project. The May revision of the budget is expected in about 2 months from now, and then the budget must be passed by June 15th. So we'll be bringing more updates as we learn more information. Anything you want to add, Carl?
No, I mean, we also reached out to Assemblymember Stone as well on this, and initially, Assemblymember did not feel this was something he could carry. However, we're interpreting that as not a no, but just a not now, and we'll be circling back with the Assemblymember since we did get Senator Laird's support to help us with this. We think that with Senator Laird running point, that we can get Assemblymember Stone back on board with this. He just didn't want, I think, didn't want to make it his specific priority, but he's very supportive of us in general. So we'll be circling back again to Assemblymember Stone on this small request. And in the past, you know, you have these larger areas, LA and MTC, trying to suck up all the air in the room, oftentimes with a little, some of our smaller requests. $5 million is a lot to us. And sometimes that's just a little rounding error or budget dust, as they say. And we've been successful with these more modest requests in the past. We hope that strategy works for us this time around too.
Thank you, Carl. Board committee members, any questions or comments? Is there any member of the public who could speak on this item? Again, I'll ask, is there any member of the public who like to speak on this item? Hearing and seeing none. I'll just add one-time interjections of these funds is highly appropriate. So I do hope the governor sees the importance of putting additional dollars into the public transit system. We'll now move on to item 4-5, receive a draft action plan for fiscal year 22, 23, and 23, 24. Carl?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just wanted to draw your attention. I've had that out and then I lost the page share. Let's see. Well, what you have, we'll just start. I'll freelance right now while I struggle to find the page. This is the first step in our developing a updated 2-year budget for your board, which you'll be looking at in May. So we start with your strategic action plan and those overall strategic priorities. And then we start developing specific, discrete programs, plans that you see before you that will help us achieve those longer term goals. Things that I want to draw your attention to are in the coming year that will be important are the negotiations of the ATU collective bargaining agreement, which we'll have on your closed session later today to open that up. And also the MSTEA Employee Association Memorandum of Understanding. Other items you'll see are continuations of work that we're already working on, like our continuing our SURF busway and bus rapid transit and implementing the FTA capital investment grant. Some newer items that we'll be looking at. Draw your attention to item number 3, an East LSL bus rapid transit and Salinas Transit Center relocation study as funding allows. This is a program I mentioned earlier this year, working together with Taylor Farms and the city of Salinas to examine alternatives to our existing transit center location. And as part of that, begin the process of studying bus rapid transit. The item next to it, we have, we'll just say some legacy systems that are in need of being updated, and our new Chief Information Officer, Michael Coleman, is helping us to develop that plan. And that's very closely linked to item 13, which is our overall document management, records retention systems. We've identified during the pandemic on a couple of occasions that we could be doing a better job of tracking our critical documents. This became an issue in our financing when we were being asked to produce documents that were 10 or 15 years old. And staff really had to scramble through the archives to find these documents. We, at that point, just decided that we need a better way of storing and retrieving these documents, and we'll be looking to automate that in the coming year. We'll be implementing the Measure Q services, as well as the comprehensive operational analysis services, and reworking our system as part of our what will be our 50th year anniversary coming up over the next year of MST. So those are some of the major new items. And the last item is looking at I want to draw your attention to item 7, is beginning to look and start the process of doing something with our Salinas operation and maintenance facility. The facility is nearly 40 years old. It was designed a long time ago and did not contemplate the level of services that we're currently operating in the Salinas Valley. So we've recently updated our Monterey facility. We've constructed a new King City facility. We want to now rehab and update our Salinas operations facility and make it ready for the future, including zero emission bus, battery electric bus charging, hydrogen fueling, and the like, and also perhaps host our minibus fleet operations, which we currently depend on the kindness of the Army to provide us a lease, and as at least some of our local jurisdictions, I'm looking at you, Dan Albert, know that the whims of the Army, they blow hot and cold. And I think that having to depend on the Army for our leases for the long term may not be to our best, to serve us best. We may be better if we can control our own site for that, and that will be part of this project as well. So those are the types of things that staff will be recommending as a draft action plan as we put our budget together. Be interested to hear your board's thoughts, or if there's any direction, any concerns about these items that we have listed for you.
Committee members, questions, comments? I will mention one is Carl, I did like on the 23-24. I think the whole package is really well thought out. I did like in the 23-24 year, item 17, promote and participate in planning efforts for autonomous vehicle infrastructure where it would support MST. That's great to see that in there, especially where the federal government just, I guess, a few days ago gave the green light towards autonomous vehicles without steering wheels to start to be rolled out. So this is a great time to look at that. I've always said and felt that autonomous vehicles, a natural home, is under public transit's umbrella. So I think there's a huge opportunity there. And then when you mentioned on the legacy systems, as we look for, as you look into that, just keep in the back of your mind, what would be necessary as autonomous vehicles come through? Will it be cloud-based systems? Will it be additional servers? Just a thought that we could prepare and add as needed additional resources in IT. And with that, I will go to the public. Is there any members of the public who to speak on this item? Again, I'll ask, is there any members of the public who to speak on this item? Hearing and seeing none. Thank you, Carl. Appreciate that. We'll now move on to item 4-6, receive the MST brand vision with Akuyo.
We have Akuyo here in person,
Awesome.
and she'll be doing a PowerPoint presentation, I believe.
Yes, and
You get to control it, I believe.
I thought Scott was in.
Okay, well, you work it out with Scott.
Good morning, committee members, staff, community, public. It feels strange to be here in person, actually, but we're here finally. This morning, I'd like to share an update with you about our strategic brand development and the development of our brand vision. So before I actually get into the presentation, just a little bit of history on this. Back in 2019, there was a marketing communication plan developed that kind of outlined how we need to better connect, how we can better connect with our community, also internally with our own team. That was in 2019, and projects were planned for the coming year. 2020 came along and something happened. A lot of our plans had to be kind of shifted. We reprioritized early 2020. So this project had to kind of take a pause as we took care of other things that really needed to be taken care of. So now we're in a better place and we've kind of reinitiated our work here. So we'll get started onto branding. Am I doing this, Scott? Oh, there it is. Okay, so let's get into this. What is brand vision? There's a lot of ways to explain this. I think a simple, clear way is really why MST exists. Why are we here? Why do we do what we do? And I think there's a couple of basic, simple answers, to provide bus service, transportation. But I think we can all agree that MST does more and is more than that. So the brand exercise came about when it was identified in the marketing and communication plan. We really needed to identify the why we exist and really kind of develop our own unique evidence of distinction, who we are to the community, who we are to employees, stakeholders, anyone. And we needed to make sure and think through how we communicate our message, any message. Speaking to our community is more than just the 2% of Monterey County that uses our service. We need to speak to everyone. We're all here in our community. So riders, non-riders, partners, stakeholders, employees, everyone. And so it was quite a large undertaking. So you might ask why it's so important that we create this brand vision. It's a way to clearly and simply communicate who we are and why we do what we do. So thinking of our passenger, why do we do what we do? Thinking of my coworkers, why do we do what we do? It's an inspirational way to communicate that. It's more than just a campaign. It's not a one and done. It's something that's going to be long-term. It's more than a slogan that's created, one tagline. It's much more. And so, yeah, this is a long-term commitment that we're really excited to share with you today. So if I'm not making any sense with my explanation, here are some examples that might help. So Apple, to build tools that amplify human ability. What we hear every day on the street is think different. That's what we recognize, but it's based on their vision to build tools that amplify human ability. Nike is another big one that everyone knows about, just do it. But it comes from a bigger vision that they have as an organization. These vision statements inspire their campaigns and inspire everything else that they do. I'm sorry, did you have a question?
No, please
Nope.
continue.
Okay, someone just needs to be on mute. Okay, so how we arrived at our brand vision. So we worked with a brand consultant and followed a pretty thoughtful process. Included in that process was research. Luckily, we had some really great research that was conducted recently with the COA. So there's a lot of information that was available to us. And we created and worked and developed a brand narrative. Really thought about who our passengers in the community are. Why do they need us? What do we do for them? What do we provide for them? What are their aspirations? It was very long and detailed and very, I think, needed to really understand how we can best connect with our population here. We worked with our management team. We shared our thoughts and suggestions. We solicited feedback, and we were able to arrive at our brand vision, which is here, the big reveal. So we're connecting communities, creating opportunity, and being kind to our planet. That encompasses who we are and why we do what we do. It's not just the what. A lot of times the what is out there. What do? We provide public transportation. That's very, it's true. It's not a lie, but the why do we do it? And I think this statement encompasses a lot, and it can mean a lot of things for a lot of different people, but it's all positive and it's what we do. So below the vision are the brand values that support our vision: safety, friendliness, dependability, diversity, achievement. Those are 5 terms that are easy to remember, but next to that is our behavior, how we do that, how we provide safety. We care for others in all we do. Friendliness, welcoming, helpful, and understanding. I won't read through the list because I know y'all know how to read, but I think the words after safety, caring for others in all we do, that's where kind of it has that human touch and our connection to the community. So these are the values of MST. So next steps, we're going to solidify this brand. So today I'm sharing this with you. Next month, we hope to come before the full board. We'll be developing a roll-up plan in parallel. And we plan to communicate this starting about May, internally and externally. So internally, we'll be creating a brand momentum group, which will be made up of some key staff. And we will talk through how we're going to share this with the entire team. We'll share this at employee town halls, on our social media pages, on any kind of signage throughout our buildings. We want to kind of make it front and center to everyone that walks in our facility. They will see this, they will read this, they will remember this. Externally, we'll include it in newsletters, at all our events, celebrations, outreach events, recruitment activities. I think it's important for people to know that when we go out and recruit as well, who we are and what kind of a team they're joining. In all our printed materials, on bus advertising, so on, everywhere. We're going to make sure that people recognize this statement and know that when they see that, they're talking about MST. To the next slide here. So I'd like to wrap this up with our brand vision right in front of you. This is kind of one of the last pieces of the marketing and communication plan that was identified in that plan to kind of complete the direction for the marketing communications area to be effective and successful. But I kind of see this more as the beginning versus the end. This is where we're going to start. And I think it's a great time, more than ever. We need kind of this fresh start. We're already doing these things, but this is our way to share that with the community and make sure everyone is on board. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Kuyo. Committee members, any questions or comments? Is there any member of the public who'd like to speak on this item? Again, I'll ask, is there any member of the public who'd like to speak on this item? Hearing and seeing none, I'll come back to the committee. I really do like the work that you're doing. I do think it's important. And the three, connecting communities, creating opportunity, and being kind to our planet, really allows us to encompass all the different things that we're doing in a very organized way. So thank you for your work on that. And I believe you said in April this would come to the board.
That is the plan.
Okay. Will it be coming? It won't be going to any other committees before then, right?
No.
All right.
Nope.
Well, thank you, Akuno.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, we do not have a closed session meeting, so that ends our meeting. We'll adjourn at 9.
Mike, since we have about, I'm going to say 10 minutes,
Okay,
would the committee be interested in seeing a commercial that MST will start running beginning on Wednesday on KSMS, KSBW, and a number of other outlets around the country?
absolutely.
Okay, Scott, if you're able, could you run the commercial that Akuyo sent to you? There we go. This is.
Okay. All right, that's enough. All right. I've got enough. Come on! Oh, you gotta be kidding me! What the heck? Man!
So we're doing a short campaign over the next several weeks. Hopefully it's a painful time for everyone at the pump, but hopefully we can do this in a way that's a little fun. This is an ad campaign that we've had sitting in the vault for a while from the last spike, and we've unveiled it. And just thought your board would be interested in seeing that. You'll be seeing it in moderate rotation over the coming several weeks. So that's
Thank
all
you,
we've got, and we're
Let me ask, does any committee members have any comments? Any member of the public have any comments? Again, I'll ask, any member of the public have any comments? Carl, thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that. We will adjourn the meeting at 9:47 a.m. Thank you, everyone. See you at the board meeting.
Okay.